And welcome back to Crash Media Paranormal. This is Craig, and this is my bestest buddy, Miss Ashley. I
Hello.
hope everyone had a great Christmas. We're excited to be
Yes.
back. And a week from today, we released one of our best episodes as far as evidence goes. Ashley, tell us a little bit. Well,
Yeah.
Ashley's going to tell us a little bit about that right after this. All right. Tell us a little bit about this episode that we released 1 week ago. 1 week ago today.
All right. So this was an investigation that we did back in August of last year.
Right.
And it was a 2 night investigation. We had a lot of audio and video, everything to kind of like go through. So it took us a while to get this episode kind of finished, but we released it last week,
Mhm.
and it features the Smith County Courthouse and the Smith County Heritage Museum, both in Carthage, Tennessee. And it was a really exciting trip, just because it was, anytime we go to like a 2 night investigation, we have a lot of fun. We all stayed in this big Airbnb. It was really nice.
It was really nice.
um yeah, but we had a lot of little experiences, and some little things like maybe hearing some disembodied like whistles. There's one time it was like a little squeal that a few of us heard. Little, few things like here and there. But it was that second night at the museum where I feel like we walked away with one of the most compelling pieces of evidence that we've, or for me, have ever captured, like
Absolutely.
documented proof. And so we're going to talk about that, but also how we went about trying to debunk it. I mean, we, especially like Scott and I, have tried to analyze the video, the raw footage of the video, the images, the raw images of it. Um, Scott even right now has a friend of his that is a video analyst. He can analyze like videos and everything. He's trying to look at it to see if he can see anything from the IR night vision footage
Mhm.
that Jonathan was recording. And so we're still trying to look into it because it was such an amazing capture
Right.
that I'm still trying to make sense of it.
Yeah, it
Um,
was. I mean,
yeah.
You called me and said, "Okay, I'm about to send you something." And I was like, "Okay, okay." Because
Mhm.
we're used to EVPs. We get EVPs. We get fluctuations. We get lights. We get a lot of stuff. But one of the hardest things to capture, and something I don't think we've captured in this kind of detail ever in any of our investigations, is a full
Mhm.
body apparition. So
Mhm.
you called me and you were like, "You're not going to believe this." So you sent it. I looked at it. I was like, "What? Are you what?" And then it like took me completely by surprise. It's like, oh my gosh, it was
Well, I feel like it's such a good capture that I even thought it has to be
somebody.
somebody,
Uh huh.
or it has to be like mistake. Like so I watched the video of Jonathan, the footage that he, had of me
Hmm.
doing, the full spectrum camera. I watched that footage over and over. I tried to match it up and sync it up to like the full spectrum camera footage and everything. And I got to the point I was like, I can't debunk it.
Mm.
And that's when I reached out to you guys and was like, okay, look, there's something here. I cannot figure out what it is.
Hmm.
Um, and Scott is the one who enhanced the photo, kind of like through adding like some contrast
Right.
and adjusting like the RGB channels and inverting it and everything. That really brought out the detail in it. And so that, yeah, was pretty cool. By the way, Jeremy says hello.
Hey, Jeremy, good to see you.
But before we we show it,
Hmm.
there's a few other pieces of, different things that happened at, because we started the first night we investigated the courthouse.
Right.
And so, there's a few things that happened there. And we can talk about that. And then the museum and how those two kind of like correlate together, those
Right.
locations. And so the courthouse,
Hmm.
let's see, it was, I can't remember, when was it constructed? 18, between 1877 and 1879, I
Right.
believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and that building is actually the second building built on the property, but it sits right there in the middle of the town square.
Hmm.
Really cool building, has a lot of history with it. Al Gore's office was in that building on the third floor, I believe.
I believe so. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and so anyway, it was a really cool building,
Oh
and
yeah.
when if you notice those little round windows,
Hmm.
and I can't remember the full story, so we actually booked this through Mid 10 Paranormal, and our contact through that is Steven, and he was telling us kind of the history with those windows, and there was something, and I don't remember the piece of history exactly, but it had to do with kind of like a battle that was going on between some Native Americans and the people there, and it was to prevent them from breaking the windows or something. I cannot remember. I'll have to ask David about that little piece of history. But it was just really neat because it wasn't just for looks, like there was a purpose for those round
Right.
windows.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It was
Sort of like
really
as
cool.
lookout
So
to repel attacks. Um,
yeah.
I was the last one to get there that night because I had some things I had to take care of in Birmingham, and it was a long drive. So I probably got there about what 9, about 9, yeah, I believe about 9 o'clock at night, and
And really we didn't even get started until about 8 that
right,
night.
right, right, right.
Yeah.
So I didn't get to go to the walkthrough. I just pretty much came in and started investigating. Um,
Mhm.
which led to a lot of antics on the stage, which you can see in our episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes,
Well,
yeah, sometimes
yeah.
when we do an investigation, as the night goes by, we tend to get a little silly, but we're a little silly sometimes anyway. And sometimes we get some of our best evidence when we're just being ourselves and being silly and acting
Mhm.
up and acting crazy. And
Yeah.
so ghost
Well,
hunting, yeah, it's not always
it's kind
just being serious. Serious. We got to have some fun too.
of yeah, gotta enjoy it, gotta have fun
Oh
with
yeah.
it. But, it was kind of quiet. I think that was probably like our second or third session that night,
Mhm.
and it was kind of quiet
Right.
so far. And so a lot of times what we'll do is like a role play session or something to kind of like kickstart things. Sometimes that energy stirs things up a little bit, and so, um, you know, it, but the reason why we did the play was because there was a man who, and I can't remember what year it was, but it was in the more recent decades, like maybe like in the 80s or something.
Right.
And he used to put on community plays there in the courthouse, and he passed away of a heart attack. And so there's been claims that people believe, is his spirit there, and so it's just kind of one of those things that we thought, well, maybe we can kind of recreate that energy of a theater. Then we can kind of get some activity, which we started getting on the tripwire.
Hmm.
So we had a few things, and also kind of like an EVP. It wasn't like words or a sentence or anything, but it was kind of that like a soft voice, but it happened twice within a matter of a couple of minutes of each other on the recorder. But it was a soft voice, and that's featured on our
Right.
episode. To me, it seemed more like a female voice, so I
Yeah.
don't know who that could have been. There are claims of people seeing a woman coming down the staircase in the courthouse. They call her the woman in white. Not much is known about her. They just see a woman in white. So, could that be who we heard? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And there is a cemetery on the property or
Mhm.
across the street. And you
It's kind of
know,
like behind it, and
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and it's very old. Tell us a little bit about the cemetery.
So, part of really like where the courthouse is, kind of like some of the history of there's a bit darker. There's history of like uh, public hangings and things
Yeah,
like that. And so, I mean, the cemetery does contain a lot of the, graves and everything from people, from the town throughout history. However, there is an area kind of in the back where they say that they would take sometimes like the people who would be lynched or even like sometimes Civil War soldiers, like during that time period of the Civil War, they would just bury them in that cemetery and just put a rock on top.
mm,
They would just do like a mass little grave.
yeah,
Um, and so it's, a lot of times what they would do with the enslaved people that they would hang, they would actually throw their bodies in the river, which they actually believe that one of the spirits there named Fred was a 15-year-old
right.
boy who um, was killed during a public hanging, and they threw his body in the river.
Mm,
But there are bodies in the cemetery from those public hangings and everything. And but a lot of times, what they would do with the enslaved people is just throw them in the river, which is so awful
oh
to
yeah,
even have to
imagine.
talk about.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Um, and so that just kind of sheds light a little bit on sometimes like the darker part of history.
Right.
But that to me also is important to kind of know that part of the history so that when you go to a location and investigate and do what we do, you've really got to respect the spirits
Yes,
there.
absolutely.
Yeah,
100%. Absolutely.
yeah.
Mm,
And I will say one more thing. This is one thing that I didn't include in the episode, but Stephen had told us that it it's believed that Fred on the third floor doesn't like women. And the first session of the night was Heather, Stacy, D, and I. And Stacy and D are from Chicken Little
right.
Paranormal.
And they're awesome. We
We
love them.
we went upstairs on the third floor. That was our first session of the night. We did a big EVP session up there. We didn't get any kind of feelings or anything of an entity not liking women. Um, there was a report of a female investigator or somebody was up there and felt attacked, and so that's why they believe that it doesn't like women.
Mm,
But I kind of question, like, maybe it's a certain skin tone person that they don't like. I
yeah,
mean,
it's
that would make sense
possible.
to me,
Yeah,
because of what they went through.
yeah.
And so
Now,
one thing, yeah,
yeah, my that was my first. Once I got there, my first. Well, no, my first was actually on the stage with y'all, and then after that, I did a solo session up on the third floor, and I didn't get anything, but there was definitely a vibe up there. You know, you could just feel it. You could
yeah,
feel the history. You could feel the sort of the darkness, and
yeah, it's sad. It's very
yeah,
sad.
yeah, it's like a heavy feeling. You can, especially when you know the story of what had happened up there,
Yeah.
and it's just you can imagine. I don't know, and it's probably just pure imagination, but you can just imagine, this person standing right beside you, and asking, what are you doing here? I got no
Hmm.
no EVPs, nothing there, but there was a definitely a sense of presence and a sense of just respectfulness. You know what I mean? In a way,
Yeah. Well, and one of the things we set up there during our first EVP session is in case Fred is there, we let him know, hey, we are not
right?
here to hurt you or make you feel uncomfortable or anything. Like, we are visiting, and we're here with good intentions. So we wanted to really set that, um, just put that out there so that if so Fred or anyone that would still be there would understand we're not there to hurt him,
Right,
because I could see why maybe a spirit like him, and remember he was a 15-year-old boy,
right.
um, I could see how he would feel very threatened with certain people coming into his space.
And
And
as
so
a teacher, I teach 15-year-olds and 16, 17, and 18-year-olds, and and it just
Mhm.
I just couldn't imagine it. I could not imagine harm on on these kids, because I will protect my kids
Mhm.
with everything I've got. You know, in today's age,
Yeah.
I will protect them with everything I've got. Um,
Mhm.
and that does, give me a lot of sadness. When we have to,
Yeah.
when we have to go into a place where we know things like that happen, is, you've got to
Yeah.
be respectful every time.
And, I think one of our goals is to even just walk away from there, hopefully giving that spirit a sense of peace that things
Yeah.
are different. They're not like they were then, and that they are, just, I don't know, hopefully
Yeah.
give them a little bit of comfort.
Yeah. Whatever we can do. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Changing a little bit. We did. It was a 2-night investigation. We stayed at an amazing B&B, like right across the street, and
Mhm.
probably one of the just fun investigations that we've been on in a while, because we got to walk around.
Mhm.
We got to check out some local places, and it was just a
Mhm.
nice little area. So we highly recommend going to Carthage,
Mhm.
Tennessee. It's very nice.
Yeah. I like it when we can go and do 2-night
Yeah.
investigations because a lot of times when we go and we don't we go, arrive in time for the investigation, do what
Yep.
we need to do, then the next morning we'll pack up and leave,
Mm.
go maybe grab a bite on the way out or something. Doing stuff like that gives us time to actually hang out and have fun with
Yeah.
it, and
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
And we got to do some interviews and have a few bloopers and everything. And
Yeah. Yeah, I always love our bloopers.
oh yeah, oh yeah. So before we get to our evidence, let's show one of our little bloopers here. This is us trying to be
Okay.
serious for a nice, serious investigation for our
Uh-huh.
episode. So here we go. Action. Tonight we're in Car. Tonight we're in. Tonight we're in Carthage. Carthage.
Mhm.
Laugh. I'm so sorry. Heritage Museum. Be investigating the Smith County Courthouse.
And we've investigated with them before, and they're awesome. And this sucks, so let's do this again.
And it is right. I do love you.
Yeah.
So that was always fun. So that and
Yeah.
that lets us sit down, have a little bit of fun. We had Jonathan behind the camera, and he was laughing, and he was sort of making us laugh, and we just have a good time. And we have a good
Yeah.
time anytime we all get
Yeah.
together, because we're like a family. We fuss at each other, we cuss at each other, we a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Right.
But with that little blooper, when we set up to even introduce, like, in the episodes, you'll see us like introduce somewhere. It
Mhm.
takes us probably like, 5 to 10 takes to get it right.
And just to get warmed
So we'll
up,
have to
because
start including.
yeah, we got to do
Yeah.
that. All right, let's talk about
Yeah.
the next night. The next night we were at the museum, at the Smith County
Yes.
Heritage Museum. And honestly, I will tell you, this was not what I was expecting. The museum was not anything like I was expecting. It had a
Yeah.
lot of stuff, and we spent the first like 2 hours just walking around, because it was
Mhm.
just amazing. Some of the things they have, all the way from Native Americans to Al Gore. It's just an
Mhm.
amazing collection that they have there. So
Yeah, they also had stuff from like the first African American church in the
yeah,
town,
yeah,
and um, even minerals from the land.
yeah, exactly.
Um, yeah, and so everything in there was artifacts and just objects from Smith County.
Hmm.
So it was really neat seeing all that Civil War
Yeah.
stuff, and so um, yeah, so it was very small inside, and so
Yeah.
when we first got, we didn't set up our whole DVR system that we normally do, just because of the size of it and everything. And we had a few maybe GoPro cameras and some
Hmm.
stuff set up, and so um, this was actually just right down the road from the courthouse,
Yeah.
and
Almost
so there's
almost across the street. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could walk from one to the
Oh
other,
yeah.
and so, yeah, and it was really cool. Um, I love museums anyway, but, um, you go into it kind of wondering, what all could be there. Is so many artifacts and everything that anything could be attached to some of these items.
Yeah.
One thing that I failed to mention in the episode was actually a little piece of history of the museum itself, the building. Do you remember it used to be a t-shirt
Oh
factory?
yeah. 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 And
And
there's still
yeah,
needles. Yeah, there's still like needles in the cracks of the floorboards, like everywhere.
yeah,
You go in there, they're sunk down in there, and they was telling us, yeah, you're gonna see needles everywhere, and everywhere you look, there were
yeah,
needles in the floorboards. It was pretty cool.
yeah. Yeah, I thought I got a picture of like the little crack in the baseboards with a needle in it,
Yeah.
and I couldn't find that picture. So one day if I find it, we can share it on here.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so we started I think with a big group EVP
Mhm.
session, and we didn't get any EVPs I believe, but we did have like some tripwire activity. Since we did not have our DVR system set up, we didn't have a camera on the tripwire. It was kind of up to the back, and we just both had our little handheld cameras. And
Yeah.
but it was a small enough building that we all were able to kind of get in a little exhibit area, all kind of spaced out a little bit, but still talk to each other.
Mhm.
And so we kind of would go in a circle, asking EVP questions and just kind of going around. But around right, let's see, I think first Heather started getting cat ball activity,
Mhm.
and I wish we had this on camera, but she there was two cat balls. One was on the doctor's bag. She works in the medical field, so she was actually in the medical exhibit. There was one cat ball on the doctor bag, one on the scale, and when she would ask her EVP questions, the cat ball on the doctor bag would start going off. Now the cat balls, they don't detect vibration,
Mhm.
EMFs, anything like that. They have to be touched.
Mhm.
Like you
Yeah.
have to literally grab one in order to make it light up. And anyway, that cat ball on the doctor bag went off a couple of times.
Yeah.
So then she said, "There's other cat balls over here. Can you make the one on the scale go off
Mhm.
or light up?" And just almost immediately, the one on the scale lit
Yeah.
up. And it had not lit up until she said that. Right after that, you started getting hits on the tripwire,
Mhm.
and I say you because it was over there beside you, and like you would ask a EVP or you would ask a question or something, and the tripwire would start flashing,
Right.
detecting EMF
Right.
fluctuations.
I was in the education area. They had like early 1900s schoolroom set up. And so I
Mhm.
was sitting in the education section. Heather's in the medical section. I'm in the education section. So,
Yeah. Yeah, we all tried to sit kind of like in an area that feels like we could relate to it
right.
somehow. Like you, education, you're a teacher,
Mhm.
Heather, the medical field. Um, David's in the military
Mhm.
section, and I sat kind of in the Native American section. Jonathan sat with the snacks. Apparently, he said no, he wasn't eating snacks during it. He was just
Oh,
joking. But
I don't believe that for a second.
yeah. um, but yeah, you were getting hits on the tripwire. Scott went over and he started doing some atmospheric tests to
Mhm.
make sure that because we know that things like lightning,
Yeah.
weather can actually trigger frequencies can kind of trigger it and stuff too,
And they
like even
can,
our walkie-talkie.
yeah, and they can definitely trigger the tripwires. We've seen
Yeah.
that happen.
And so he went over there and he's had all these things to test, like radio waves, microwave frequencies, bunch of different other stuff. And when the tripwire would light up, he wouldn't detect any interference.
Yeah. Right.
And so, yeah, and then it wouldn't do anything until you would ask a question. When you asked a question, let us know you're here. Boom, it lights up.
Right. Right.
And then Heather started asking a few questions. It would only light up kind of like as it was responding to us. It wasn't even just doing it nonstop. It was only specific times.
Yeah,
So
and that was
it was
unfortunately, though we didn't have a camera with us, or we had our cameras, but nothing on the tripwires. So I wish we
yeah.
could have gotten that, but yeah,
Mhm.
it was pretty cool. And well, until very recently, I did not like the tripwires. It's
Mhm.
like, oh God, these just go off randomly. But in the past 2 to 3 investigations, I've really seen it correlate to some things that have been happening with us. So I'm
Mhm.
starting to come over to Team Tripwire a little bit.
Yeah.
Sometimes it does very random things, but when it does start correlating relatively or very quickly to what we're doing, that's when it sort of jumps at me and says, there might be something
Yeah.
to this.
Yeah. And it's like, with Scott doing all those tests,
Hmm.
and we always put our phones on airplane mode
Yeah,
because even receiving a text message can trigger some of our
yeah,
EMF detectors.
and
And
definitely REM pods.
um,
They'll play havoc on
yeah,
REM
and
pods.
K2s and all that.
Mhm.
And so you want to try to eliminate as many things like that that could give you a false reading of
Mhm.
something. And so when you start getting, I mean, if the tripwire sometimes goes off, it's not consistent or whatever, it could be a sudden burst of some kind of energy that kind of triggers it, that's just kind of like static through the air or
Yeah.
something. But with Scott going over there, testing all those things and not detecting those, so
Mhm.
interference was not causing it to go off.
Right.
That was makes it more interesting, I
Yeah,
think.
absolutely, absolutely, and just gives us a little bit more peace of mind that if we catch something, it could be more paranormal than natural. So I like
Yeah.
that. Tell us a little bit about a couple of EVPs, or a couple of audio phenomenons or audio abnormalities that we got.
We didn't get any clear like
Right.
EVPs there. Um, but there would be a few sounds and stuff that we would get on our recorder. And a lot of times I'll include if there's a strange noise or whisper or gasp or like
Hmm.
something on there. And on the video, you see it's not coming from anybody, but the recorder picks it up. A lot of times, could we figure out like and debunk what a certain thing is? If we had have realized it in the moment, we probably could have, but sometimes, weeks later when we're going through our
Right.
recordings, there's no way to really tell. But I'll watch back on my videos, which also is a really good reason why um when we record for our episodes and everything, that has given me so much
Oh
footage
yeah.
to help either debunk or validate something. Because if there's noises or a voice or something that comes through a recorder, we're like, well, wasn't one of us? I can go and watch the footage that we've recorded of ourselves and be like, okay, well, nobody was talking during then or
Hmm.
whatever. And so that's been kind of like a extra little helpful thing for us to record these episodes. Um, but let's see. I was trying to think in particular like what all we got at the museum.
Hmm.
I know at the courthouse there was one especially where um, Dee and I heard like a squeal.
Yeah.
Now this wasn't necessarily like an EVP because we heard this with our own ears, and this was during our first session. It sounded like it came from the hallway. It sounded like a child squeal,
Yeah.
or like maybe just a really loud whistle or something.
Yeah.
Heather and Stacy didn't hear it. They didn't notice it. Stacy was kind of talking at that time, but Dee and I both heard it, and I was like, "Wait a minute, did y'all hear that?" And Dee was like, "What was that?" So that it's one of those sounds like it wasn't an animal,
Yeah.
and it should not have come from inside the courthouse at night like that. Like we didn't know
Right.
what that was, but it sounded like a child.
Yeah. Let's take a listen.
I think when I
What?
become a spirit, I will terrorize.
What was that one of y'all?
So yeah, I'm gonna play it one more time just to see what people think.
I think when I
What?
become a spirit, I will terrorize.
Was that one of y'all?
All right. So yeah, I with I can't remember. Was that when I was up
You weren't there yet.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's
But
what I
this was
thought.
the very first one. Jonathan, Scott, David were the only other ones there. And so they were letting us girls go up there and do our first session. So everybody else was like real quiet. And because we were trying to do an EVP session. And but yeah, on the audio, it is kind of faint.
Mhm.
We heard it pretty clearly. With the audio, it sounds a little bit more like a whistle, and it was a little bit more faint. That's the bad thing with sometimes with audio. It's like it doesn't sound the way it does in person
Right.
when you actually hear something. But it was definitely a noise that shouldn't have been there. We couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
But during that same session, like right, I think maybe towards the beginning of that session, we started getting activity with the cat balls again.
Yeah.
And one thing that's really weird, which I consider this an EVP, it's hard sometimes because the ladies and I, we were talking, and it's a voice that talks as we're talking. So sometimes it's like, so it's hard to either validate that like fully or debunk it because it wasn't one of our voices. Now, most people would say, well, y'all were talking, so you can't say it's an EVP. But I talked to Stacy and Dee both, and trying to figure out like, was this one of our voices? But what's really weird, we were talking about the cat ball because the cat ball just went off, and Heather said, vibration wouldn't set that off, and Stacey's like, no, like it doesn't detect like EMS or anything like that. A voice comes through as we're talking. It says either I touched it or touch it. But the voice sounds so different, and it sounds like it's very concentrated in the recorder. When I was the only one sitting right next to the recorder, because it was my recorder. It's obviously not my voice. The other ladies, when they would talk, you could kind of hear, their voice sounds kind of at a distance because of the acoustics in the room. But the voice, it just comes through a little bit like deeper on there, and it says touched it.
Okay, let's take a
So
listen.
I'm just wondering, I'm wondering
yeah.
if Spirit was saying they touched it. They set it off by touching it.
Let's take a look.
Cat ball.
Oh, cat ball. Yep. And there's nothing that would make that go off except
No.
for,
I'm a
touching.
good 10 inches away from this box.
Yeah. And I mean, walkie-talkie wouldn't make it go off.
Mm-mm. Cat ball.
Oh, cat ball. Yep. And there's nothing that would make that go off except
No.
for,
I'm a
touching.
good 10 inches away from this box.
yeah. And I mean, walkie-talkie wouldn't make it go off.
Mm-mm.
All right, so that was pretty cool. Now, again, can we say that 100% that was an EVP? What do you think?
I can't say 100%.
Right.
But I can say that, and also my camera didn't show everybody, and so I can't prove that nobody was actually saying touched it. But just from the way it sounded to me, and kind of just I have to trust myself kind of in all of that. I feel like it's very possible it was an EVP. I include all of those things like in the episode if it's something that I feel like, well, I can't fully debunk it. I can't fully, validate it. Kind of like with the tripwires during the role play session and all that. It's like I include all of those things because I also want people to kind of see, like, even now us talking about it, trying to see, like, show our process of trying to figure out, like, if something, and part of it's shown on the episode, like in the vault, Jonathan, Heather, and I, the whole time we were doing the spirit box session, I didn't hear anything come through the earphones until I heard a woman's voice. But what's weird is my digital recorder also picked up a woman's voice.
Right.
And then I started feeling like a pressure on my chest. I felt like hands were on my chest, not in any kind of malicious way or anything. Just
Right.
sometimes like you can feel that presence, and um, all of that happened within a matter of a couple of minutes of each other. And so hear a woman's voice come through the recorder, my or the spirit box. My recorder picked up like a soft sigh, like a female sigh.
Yeah.
So that I can't fully validate. However, it's too much of a coincidence. Those two things would happen at the same time. And
Mhm.
so, I do include those things, but it was a rather quiet night at both locations.
Right.
That's why when we walked away from these investigations, we were so shocked when we actually found such a compelling piece of evidence.
Right. Because I was like, oh, this was a bust. We really didn't get anything, because I'm listening
Mhm.
to my audio and I don't think I got anything. Like nothing that I could even think could be an EVP. It's like all the hours I just got nothing. And
Mhm.
then I get
I
a
actually
call.
was kinda,
And
yeah,
then I
I
get
was
a call from
actually
Ashley. Yeah.
thinking, I was thinking that this episode's gonna end up being one that we can just, even though we don't have anything
Yeah.
paranormal to actually show, we can show our process of
Yeah.
even debunking, and we can
Mhm.
show sometimes you get nothing at a location. It doesn't mean it's not haunted. It's
Exactly.
just sometimes it's a quiet night.
Mhm.
It comes in waves at every location, and so, you know, um, but we ended up with one of our best pieces.
I mean, that's what was so crazy about it. Because your first time with us at Old South Pittsburgh Hospital, we got nothing. And for Old
Mhm,
South Pittsburgh Hospital, that's an impossibility. You're going to get something there because that place
mhm.
is nuts. But the first
Yeah,
night, so your very first investigation with us pretty much was like, we got nothing. Um, but you're right. Sometimes you can walk away just thinking, oh my God, this is going to be horrible. And you got 15 EVPs or you've got, an apparition showing up on camera. So
yeah.
tell us about what had happened. Yeah, just talk to us a little bit about
Okay, so
this because this cool. This is cool as crap.
yeah. So, I think this was, like, after a few sessions in, everybody kind of, like, regrouped in the little area where we had, like, our table and our gear and everything.
And
You were
snacks.
setting up the thermal camera. Scott and them, were probably, like, changing batteries or something. So, I was like, "Well, while everybody's doing that, I'm gonna go take pictures with the full spectrum camera. Since nobody's in that room, I'll just go in there," and I asked Jonathan to video me. And with the purpose, like in my mind, of document me doing this so I can show people what we do. Even if we get nothing, I want
Mhm.
to be able to show people, what a full spectrum camera is. And so, I was like, just get me like, taking some pictures and then we can explain. Oh, sorry, but hit my elbow. um, and so, anyway, so we go in there, and a full spectrum camera, it takes pictures beyond just the visible like spectrum of what we can see. It takes pictures in the infrared, ultraviolet, um, magnetic spectrum. Anyway, the pretty much the full visible light
Right.
spectrum. Um, and so anyway, when you press the shutter, it'll take a series of images. You can set it to take all the way up to like 10 images. And so you just hold it still, press the button, and it just takes back to back images. And that way you can compare them.
Mhm.
You can compare and see, here's like 5 images of just like the same thing, but something shows up in that image and then that one and then no other ones, then you know that something's appearing there. Now if it was in every single image, you could probably figure out, oh, that's actually just a reflection from that thing over
Right.
there. And so anyway, I took a series of photos in one particular spot, and I noticed, actually took I took pictures all over that whole museum. This is the only little section that something appeared.
Mhm.
So I was looking through later on at home, like looking through the series of images, and I was like, something appears in this image that isn't there in that same sequence of photos.
Mhm.
And so it's like, so I started looking at it more. I was like zooming in and everything, and I was like, that looks like a person. I was like, did somebody step out? Maybe somebody, one of you guys or somebody like, maybe stepped out, not realize and then like jump back real quick or something.
But you would
So
have
then
to
I was
do
like,
that, yeah, you would have to do that within a fraction of a second, and
oh
that
yeah, because
is not
it takes us
possible.
pictures like boom, boom, boom,
Boom,
boom,
boom,
boom.
boom.
It's fast.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
Well,
mhm.
let's
Well then yeah, go ahead and show
yeah, I wanna show the video of you taking the picture before we show the actual picture. That way, you can
okay.
see what you're taking a picture of. Alright, so
Yeah.
let's take a look at that.
So this is a full spectrum camera. It can see on the different spectrums like infrared, things like that that we can't see with our own eyes, that a lot of cameras can't detect.
So that is you taking the picture, and would
Yeah.
you like to see what we took a picture of? So the first picture comes out like this. As you can see, it's pretty much a dark, empty space within the museum. And then
Yeah.
the next picture, boom, someone is literally standing there.
Well, see, when I first looked at that, I was like, when you're looking at it on a small screen on the
Hmm.
back of the camera, I'm
Yeah.
like, what is that little blob? Whatever. And so when I put it on my computer and like compared the images back to back, I was like, that's got to be one of us
Right.
stepping out. Because you can't really see the details. Like that's got to be somebody.
Hmm.
So I then pulled up the video of the raw uncut like footage of like Jonathan's camera videoing me.
Hmm.
So I matched it up to the exact moment where he was videoing me taking that specific photo. And I was like, I watched it over and over and over. And I was like, there is absolutely no one standing there in the night vision camera. Like it clearly shows there is nobody there.
Right.
Nobody steps out. And then when I look at these images, I'm like, but the full spectrum camera sees
Hmm.
someone there.
Yep.
And one thing that Scott pointed out, it doesn't show up in the infrared, it only shows up in the ultraviolet spectrum,
Yeah.
which, he and I have been talking about. That shows that there's so much we miss
Oh,
unless
yeah.
we're covering
Absolutely.
the full spectrum
Hmm.
with everything we do, then we're missing a whole realm of anomalies that some of our other equipment's not even detecting. Um, so something was clearly there, and to me, it looks like somebody stepping out to see what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to me,
Because
it's it shows intelligence too because it literally looks at me.
exactly, and it's like standing. It's almost like it was walking and noticed you and just like turned his head, like, "Who is
Yeah,
this?" It's almost like a
yeah,
momentary, just like all of a sudden, you know, the veil lifts or something, and it's just there
yeah.
momentarily. But Scott also enhanced it, and the enhancement is just freaky. So here's this.
That where it clearly reveals the detail,
Uh huh.
that gives me chills because you can see a thick beard.
Uh huh.
You can see like a mustache and deep set eyes
Hmm.
and kind of that square forehead and just that like that that right there gives me chills.
And you can even see where his arm is bent.
Yeah.
Like you can see the bend of his elbow and where his shirt that he's wearing, and it's just this. It took. I'll be honest. When you showed me these pictures, it probably took me a full 5 minutes just to process.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It took
What are
that
we
long
seeing?
just to okay. What are we looking at? And then the realization hits you, and it's just like, damn. It's
Yeah.
like we
Well,
really
also,
we really caught
on the
something.
video on the video from like Jonathan's point of view, like that camera,
Hmm.
before I cut to the part where he even shows me explaining what the full spectrum is and then following me walking around and all that, it actually shows on that camera, it accounts for everyone in the other room.
Yep.
I can't include that whole footage. It was like, 15 minutes
Right.
long. And so it's
Exactly.
like, but it accounts for everyone. The only person that walked up for a moment was Heather right before we got started, and she
Hmm.
walked back towards the medical, or yeah, the medical area, then back into the room where the table is. Um, and then Jonathan and I were the only ones in that area, in that room. One thing that's also kind of interesting is Scott, when he first saw it, he immediately thought, that it could be some kind of like Civil War, like general. That's the
Yeah.
vibe it gave him, some
Right.
kind of Civil War soldier or general or somebody. So I was talking to Steven from Mid 10 Paranormal. I was talking to him recently actually, and he was like, well, the direction that that photo is taken, that is the Civil War area. And because, I couldn't remember like where each exhibit was, but he was like, where that actually would have appeared would have been the Civil War area kind of in the back. And so I was like, that makes it interesting that Scott mentioned it looks to him like a Civil War person because
Right.
it's actually there's so much Civil War memorabilia there.
Yeah. It's
But yeah,
it's
that
amazing to me.
definitely, I've never caught anything that clear. When he sent me that enhanced version, I think I just stopped talking for a minute. I was like,
Yeah. Yeah. Because you
"That's so
texted it to
scary. That's
me.
scary."
Yeah. You
Yeah.
you texted it to me, and I was just like, you can see his eyes. You can see like there's. Oh my gosh, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It is
The fact that he
absolutely
was
crazy.
looking at me kinda gives me the creeps because
Yeah.
it's like, you can't see that person there, but there was somebody looking at you, and then you see the facial detail and everything. I'm like, "That might give me nightmares." It's creepy, but that does show you, we need to look at getting some more like full spectrum like equipment
Yeah.
because we need to have that whole spectrum covered
Oh,
through
absolutely.
a whole investigation. That would
Absolutely.
just happen to be the right place at the right
Hmm.
time, a stroke of luck for that entity to peek out to look to see what I'm doing right when I took that photo.
Yep.
And so we've got to make sure we are covering all the right times and the right moments.
Absolutely. Because I mean, that's worth it right there.
Yeah.
I've been doing this 18 years, and you've been doing this for 7.
With the group, I've been doing it since 2019, 2018, 2019.
Okay, so about 6 years. Yeah. So and this is our first. This is our first definitive. Like he was there.
Yeah.
He was there.
Heather, I believe, Heather captured with the same full spectrum camera because it's David's camera.
Mhm.
Heather captured an apparition at another museum. I don't know which museum it was, but it looks like a Native American spirit. We can see like a
Oh,
feather
yeah, I
as
remember
well.
that. I remember that. I remember that. Yeah,
Headpiece.
yeah, yeah. But it
Yeah,
was.
and
I mean, that was good, but it's not this like perfectly clear. It
yeah,
was.
it wasn't quite
Yeah,
as clear.
we'll have to
But
dig that one up and put it on an episode.
yeah, but that it was weird because that was another museum.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the
Um,
theory is that spirits can be attached to objects,
uh-huh,
and you never know what's there. What or
yeah,
what particular object? I mean, there's museums dedicated to haunted objects, so you know
mhm,
maybe that could prove that that theory is correct.
yeah,
So who knows? But
mhm.
it was a fun 2 night investigation. We need more 2 night investigations. That was
Yeah. Yeah, I think our next one, we're going back to Old South Pittsburgh Hospital. I don't know for sure yet if
Mhm.
I'm gonna be able to go to that one, but I should be able to find out soon.
Yeah,
But that'll be another 2-night investigation. We always every time we go there, we do 2
yeah,
nights
yeah.
because it's so much ground to cover and you need 2
You
nights to
do.
investigate there.
And Old Harriman Hospital too. It's hard to do it in
Mhm.
1 night.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got a few things coming up. We just actually, I was thinking that could be a fun little contest to have. in our episode, you show the reaction Scott has to first seeing the and Laura the first time they've seen that.
Yeah.
I wonder if anyone knows where we were.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, that actually, and if there's clues on our Instagram.
yeah.
But yeah, if you watch that back, just the reveal part of
Mhm.
where when I show Scott for the first time, because up until then I had not let him see it. I was like, "You got to see this,"
Yeah, we were
but
waiting.
yeah, and and so I was talking to him about it in the car, and he was driving. And I was like, "You just wait till we get there. I'm going to show you this." But we were on our way somewhere. We are at another investigation, and yeah, so we did the reveal there because that was the first time we were all together. And so that, yeah, see if anybody can guess where we were during that reveal, because it also is going to hint at
Our
another
next,
upcoming
yeah,
episode.
exactly. So
Mhm,
I'm looking forward to it because that was a fun night. That was a great night.
mhm. Yeah.
So, this is our first episode back from our Christmas break, and so we should be coming back and having some more surprises for you and more in-depth discussions of the paranormal and cryptids and anything else that our audience would
Maybe
like to. Yeah,
aliens.
maybe aliens. You know, you never
When you
know.
talk about the aliens with all this alien talk that's been going on, but
No doubt. But
yeah.
anyway, it is so good to see you again, and I hope to talk. Well, I will be talking to you very soon, but I hope to talk to you all very soon. All right,
Mhm.
everybody, have a wonderful night, and Ashley, have a great one.
Me too.
All right, see you soon.
Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. If you want to see more videos or want to be a part of our live investigations, hit the subscribe button. Also, if you have any ideas for future investigations or want to share your own paranormal encounters, please feel free to leave a comment or send an email to crashmediaparanormal@gmail.com.